Support for this podcast comes from the law firm of Davis Malm. Whether you're a developer, property owner, manager, or commercial tenant, their real estate attorneys know the lay of the land, not just the law. Learn more at davismalm.com.
WBUR Podcast, Boston.
I'm Daryl C. Murphy, and you're listening to The Comment. Zeninjor, Enwemeka, welcome back to The Comment.
Hey, Daryl. Good to be here.
So, Zeninjor, you are a WBUR business reporter, senior business reporter. Let's not...
That's right.
Put some respect on your name, you know?
Exactly.
And lately, you have been covering biotech that Boston is the leader in. Am I correct? We're the biotech capital?
Yes, biotech capital of the world.
Of the world, man. So with that, things are going very well here as it relates to that industry, and a lot of growth is expected, a lot of job openings, but there's not enough workers. Tell me what's going on there.
Yeah, so Boston's doing very, very well. And it's interesting because there was a recent report that came out from the Massachusetts Biotechnology Education Foundation, or Mass BioEd for short. They did a recent report that really examined the biotech industry, looking at the workforce and the jobs in the industry. So I have some numbers for you if you're ready.
Yes.
All right. So Mass BioEd found that the state has more than 132,000 jobs in biotech.
Whew, that's a lot.
It's a huge number. And furthermore, the industry is projected to grow by about a third over the next decade. So Mass BioEd projects that there's going to be an average of more than 6,600 job openings annually over the next decade. So we're talking a lot of jobs, a lot of opportunity, a lot of growth in this industry. What's fascinating is that while there's so much opportunity, there's so many jobs available, we're not producing enough workers to fill those jobs. So there is this disconnect where we don't have enough folks coming out of higher education to fill the roles. And also there's this need within the industry to really try and tap into some alternative pathways, some alternative pipelines, non-traditional pipelines, training people directly, apprenticeship programs, other types of training programs to really reach more workers, particularly more diverse workers. That's an area that has been a huge challenge in biotech, and a big topic of conversation is, for example, the lack of women in leadership, the lack of people of color. So the industry has a lot of growth, a lot of opportunity, but there are a lot of gaps that need to be filled.
So tell me about these jobs, because, you know, biotech, I'm thinking people in labs and, you know, just real tech-heavy jobs, right? Because, you know, tech is in the name. But what kind of positions or roles am I not thinking about?
Yeah, so I mean, there's all sorts of jobs. You know, this is an industry that's developing a variety of drugs and medical treatments that you or I or any person in need would then be available to them. So, for example, like we saw with the pandemic, the development of all those vaccines for COVID, a lot of this stuff is really touching people in many ways through their healthcare, any medical issues you might have. So, yeah, you do have a lot of people in lab coats. You have scientists who are doing cutting edge research. You have lab techs. You have people who focus on quality control. And then there are people who actually manufacture the drugs. So, you know, that report I mentioned before actually found that there is a growing need for manufacturing jobs, which have increased by more than a third since 2019. There's also a growing need for other types of jobs in the industry as well. So things such as in business, finance, and IT. And actually, IT and computer roles have increased by over 50% since 2019. So there's a range of jobs in this industry. Some are more science and tech focused, and some require other types of skills.
And I'm just thinking, like, these type of positions compared to the more tech-heavy, tech-intense, and science-intense type of jobs that might require a lot of schooling, These, not so much. You might be able to get by with just a bachelor's or something like that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's what's so interesting is that there's a need for varying skill sets. So not just those highly specialized jobs that might require a PhD or master's or bachelor's degree, but other types of jobs. And that was actually something I spoke to the CEO of Mass BioEd, Sunny Schwartz. I spoke with her about that. And one of the things she said is that, the industry really needs to do more to reach a range of workers to fill these varying types of roles.
I think there's a perception in the life sciences that everyone has a PhD who works in this industry, and that is simply not true. In Massachusetts, only 19% of the jobs require a PhD, and 10% of them you don't even need a bachelor's degree for, and 10% of 132,000 jobs is still a lot of jobs. So there's a lot of opportunity in this industry for people at all levels of education.
With her having said that, these are still pretty well-paying jobs, right?
Yeah, I mean, biotech has a lot of opportunity. We're talking good paying jobs. There's a lot of different types of companies within biotech, right? So there's a lot of range within the industry in terms of not only the types of jobs that are available, but also the types of companies.
We're going to take a quick break, but we'll be right back.
Did you kill Marlene Johnson?
I think you're one of the first people to have actually asked.
From WBUR and ZSP Media, this is Beyond All Repair, a new podcast about an unsolved murder that will leave you questioning everything.
Somebody should be in jail for murdering my sister.
A woman who's never been believed.
As long as they think I have done this, then they're not looking for who actually did this.
And that's what makes it a cold case.
No, it's a botched case.
And a search for the truth, once and for all.
Wow, it just gets more interesting.
Beyond All Repair. Listen and follow wherever you get your podcasts.
Be careful. You're digging in a place that's been very peaceful for a while.
Do it anyway. Dig.
And we're back. We have, as you said, 132,000 open positions right now.
Yep.
And this industry is expected to grow by about a third over the next decade. But do we have enough people to fill all those positions?
Yeah, so that's the interesting thing. We don't have enough workers. So there's all these jobs. We have this big industry that's growing, but we don't have enough workers to fill those positions. So it's quite the interesting dichotomy there. I guess there's kind of two big buckets of reasons. Part of it is that there is a shortage in the state's colleges and universities. They just aren't producing enough graduates for these jobs. And part of it is that the industry needs to target a wider range of potential workers. So let's take that first issue, higher education.
Yep.
So remember, one of the numbers I mentioned before in that Mass Bio report was that they project that there's going to be an average of more than 6,600 job openings in life sciences annually over the next decade. But colleges and universities in the state are only producing about half of that amount of graduates in life sciences. So they aren't keeping up with the demand there.
Okay.
Now, on the other hand, let's look at the other issue, which is reaching a wider range of workers. So one of the things that the CEO of Mass BioEd said is that the industry needs to consider new ways of training people and recruiting more workers. So that's where we get into this idea of non-traditional pathways, such as training programs, apprenticeships, because again, there are a lot of jobs that are needed that don't require a degree, as we have already talked about. Maybe more mid-level skills or lower-level skills. So there is a need to develop these new pipelines that will reach a broader range of potential workers.
Well, is anybody developing that pipeline?
So recently, the city of Boston launched a $4 million initiative to do just that. So this $4 million initiative is to train residents for biotech jobs. So the idea with that initiative, that the mayor announced is to get more Bostonians into this booming life sciences sector. So right now they have a goal of training and employing 1,000 Boston residents in life sciences by the end of 2025. So Mayor Michelle Wu held a press conference recently to announce this initiative. And, she said the idea is to create that pipeline that I talked about, but create a pipeline of local talent for all those jobs in life sciences.
We're focused on programs that include internships and hiring commitments at life sciences companies that will train for specific in-demand positions and focus on empowering residents without 4-year degrees, particularly workers of color, women, and immigrant residents, all of whom are underrepresented in the industry today.
So the city is seeking proposals from organizations to provide training, other services and programs for that initiative. So that will be really interesting to see how that takes shape.
There are organizations in the city who are already working on creating a pipeline to biotech for local talent. Tell me about them.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So there's an organization called Year Up. It's a nonprofit based in Boston. They work with young people, typically from low income or underserved communities. And what they do is they train them. They offer classes on specific skills, such as IT, for example. They're also really big on developing professional skills and communication skills as well. And they work directly with employers to place students in internships. That's a great example of a program that's already doing that work. There are other programs too that, teach people how to code or teach other types of technical skills that do trainings, apprenticeships, or programs that help people get internships at some of these big companies. So I imagine that many of those organizations will likely work with the city on its initiative. And it will really be interesting to see beyond the individual organizations that are in many ways doing some of this work already, how that will scale on a more citywide level.
Zeninjor, do you have a sense of how many people working in Boston's biotech industry are from here versus people who moved here just to work in biotech?
Yeah, that's such a good question. And I don't have numbers on that, but it is a really good question. And I do think that, that's really a big implication behind Mayor Wu's initiative. I mean, it was also somewhat discussed a bit at the press conference when this initiative was first announced, which is that, this idea that there are communities within the city that just don't see themselves in biotech. You heard the mayor mention the lack of diversity, the lack of certain communities even being reflected and represented in biotech. And also, too, there were some community organizations, folks at that press conference who mentioned that they are seeing within their communities and neighborhoods in Boston a huge need for more outreach. There's this feeling that we have this big booming industry right here in our backyard, but a lot of folks within the community don't really see a pathway there. So that was one of the things that was being discussed about partnering with some of the community organizations within neighborhoods to really make that connection with residents in the city.
Just how effective could the city's initiative be in making biotech more diverse? What challenges lie ahead in that regard?
Yeah, it certainly has potential. I mean, I think most of that remains to be seen, right? We have to see how this actually comes together, how it's organized. As we've been talking about, there's so many different pieces of this. How is the city going to partner, not just with higher education institutions, but with public schools? Is there something that within the public school system that the city could be tapping into or creating to help, bolster and build this new pipeline of talent into this major industry for the region? Some of the challenges may be just doing the outreach. It's going to take a lot of work and initiative. It can't be a thing where, hey, we have all these jobs, but no one's applying. Sometimes you got to create the pipeline that you want to see or the pipeline that you need. And so there may be some challenges in building that. But it is interesting, though, to note that there is some precedent a little bit here. I mean, as I've sort of touched on before, there are local organizations that have been doing this kind of workforce development work. And so there is at least somewhat of a framework within some of those organizations that the city could really tap into for this broader citywide initiative.
Zeninjor, this is very interesting, and I really appreciate your reporting on this and you taking the time to talk to us here at The Common. So thank you.
Thanks.
That's WBUR senior business reporter Zeninjor Enwemeka. And that's our show for today. Thank you so very much for listening to The Common. So, do you want a job in biotech? Did this episode inspire you? Let us know. Hit us up on Instagram at WBUR The Common, or send us an email at thecommon@wbur.org. I'm Daryl C. Murphy, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.